In this episode, Golden and I discuss the 2009 indie sci-fi film Moon. Full speed ahead.
The Omega Beam. Full power.
Welcome to the Omega Beam number 103. I'm your host, Orren Merton, and I hope you're all healthy and well. So last episode, Golden picked Duncan Jones' second movie, Source Code, and this week, I picked Duncan Jones' first movie, Moon. It was a low-budget sci-fi masterpiece, and this movie, it's impossible to talk about without going into spoilers. So it's 11 years old, and we figured it's okay to kind of talk about the entire movie from soup to nuts because of its age. So if you haven't seen it yet, keep in mind, we talk about the whole thing. Let's get to it. I am here with Golden to talk about Moon, the first film directed by Duncan Jones, whose second movie, Source Code, we talked about in the previous episode. So this was one that I'd been asking Golden to see for quite a while because it really meant a lot to me and I thought was a really good movie. So how did it live up?
I thought it was very good. It's not one that I'd probably go back to and watch 20 times, but definitely a good movie.
I think this is one of the few sci-fi movies that can be classified as quote-unquote hard sci-fi, meaning it's supposed
There's very little fantasy.
Yeah, that it is supposed to be as plausible as possible, that the science is supposed to be as close to existing as possible, and that really it's using a slightly fictitious advance of what we can do now as a way to reflect back issues that we're dealing with now. And this is an 11-year-old movie. It came out in 2009, so we're going to be a little bit more free with spoilers. This is about cloning, and it's about what is a person. And how ethical is it to use clones on a moon base?
Pretty early on, you kind of figure out that there's something going on, and this is not just one man. Even though it's supposed to be one man on a 3-year mission by himself, you kind of know something's going on pretty early. And then you figure out, oh, well, he must be a clone.
Yeah, they give you clues pretty early on. The one clue, I think the first clue, is that the character of Sam Bell, played by Sam Rockwell, gets a hand injury, and then he's in a lunar rover crash, and he wakes up in the infirmary without his hand injury. So that's the first clue. But then there's almost immediately a clue after that, in that at the beginning, we're told there is no live communication, that live communication is down, and so everything is on a timed feed, and yet when he gets out of the infirmary, he sees a live communication going on. So clearly,
he hears it.
He hears it.
Yeah.
So clearly something isn't right, and he's being deceived in some reason. And then I think what makes the story so compelling, it's really two things. One is, I think Sam Rockwell does a tour de force. I mean, he is more or less the only actor on screen, and he has to carry the whole film, and he does.
And I'm looking through the trivia on IMDb. So were you aware that Duncan Jones wanted really badly to work with Sam Rockwell?
He wrote it as a vehicle for Sam Rockwell. Absolutely. And it paid off. I mean, Sam Rockwell totally carried this movie and made it so compelling. And that was one thing that really made this movie interesting. And the other is seeing how, first of all, they find out the mystery. And not the mystery of cloning, in the sense that that's something we're even told about at the very beginning. I mean, one of the Sam Rockwells, one of the Sam Bell characters says, come on, we're clones. And so it's very clear that they understand that. But it's deeper that's not all there is to the movie. It's a much deeper story. And it's about them uncovering the rest of the story. And it's about how each of these Sam Bell clones has their own personality, that the one who's been on the base for 3 years, he's kind of the one who knows how to do things.
And you don't know, I mean, they have, up to a certain point, they share the exact same memories.
Yes.
You don't know if this is the 4th clone ever. You don't know if this is the 20th clone ever.
Right.
You don't actually know what number. You don't know if this is the first clone to figure out that he's a clone.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how long each one has really been there. You kind of figure that, okay, if it's a 3-year mission, it's a 3-year mission because they figured out that the lifespan of each clone is max 3 years.
Right.
That close to 3 years is when they start breaking down. Is him breaking down what's causing the hallucinations and the glitches? You're not really sure when he has that initial crash, who was he seeing?
Right.
So there's a lot of open questions that are left with the movie.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think that they have to be answered.
Yeah, and I like how they also subvert science fiction tropes in the sense that it's kind of become a science fiction trope in a certain kind of science fiction movie to have the nasty or evil or crazy robot where, in 2001, you've got HAL 9000 or whatever, where the robot is, if not perpetrating some of the badness, at the very least, is part of covering it up or something like that. Whereas in this, you have the opposite situation, that they programmed a helper robot for Sam Bell, and its directive, its mission is to help Sam Bell and keep him alive. And so even when Sam Bell starts learning things he's not supposed to know, that the corporation is keeping from him, the robot sticks to its mission, which is to help the clone. And I thought that was interesting, how the robot, who initially you do kind of think, oh, is this going to be like HAL 9000? Is he going to be some kind of evil thing?
Still, for most of the movie, he's not sure whether or not to trust Gertie.
Oh, sure, because I'm sure as a being, he is thinking, can I trust this? Can I trust this robot? He was built by the corporation. Can I trust him? And ultimately, I think we learn that since the corporation didn't really foresee this happening, they never really built in any kind of fail-safe for Gertie. That, oh, well, if the clone finds this out, now your programming is going to change.
They're talking to Gertie, and that's the only live interaction that you really, one of the few live interactions with Earth that you actually are party to.
I think that Moon was exceptional for what it was, in the sense that it was an incredibly low-budget movie, $5 million, put together by Duncan Jones as just a great calling card for what he can do. I guess before that, he had only done commercials. So this was his first real movie, and it got so many accolades and was considered so good by so many critics. I don't think it was a huge hit. It was an indie-financed film, but I think Sony Classics, their art house, put it out. And I remember that because I remember it was kind of a big stink in the sci-fi community at the time, that a lot of people, not just individuals who enjoyed the film, but critics, thought that Sam Rockwell should have been nominated for an Academy Award. He not just plays multiple characters, but he gives them each just a deep emotional life. And it was really, really something. But Sony didn't even campaign it. They didn't put it up for anything because it was just a tiny little blip for them. I'm sure they loved the accolades. I mean, I'm sure they loved the fact that they put out a movie that was so well respected. And of course, it did jumpstart Duncan Jones' movie career. That didn't mean that Sony was going to put in a ton of money into it, which was a bummer, but understandable.
I mean, you can kind of guess that he's only into this a couple clones, since his daughter's now 15.
Right. That's one of the
so maybe this is like
for
the
us.
Fourth or fifth.
Fourth or fifth. That's what I think is pretty clear, that the baby that they all think is a baby that they left as an infant and now is 15. And so that's about 5 3-year missions. So it makes it clear
And
that
I guess at the very end of the movie, although I didn't catch it, it does say Clone 6. Because some of the chambers down below were actually marked red, which,
okay,
I missed that detail.
Yeah. So the Clone 6 was the one they bring out at the very end?
Clone 6 is the one that makes it back.
Clone 6 makes it
back. Because I guess the reporters heard saying, Clone 6, the clone of Sam Bell, has been giving evidence.
Right. I didn't hear Clone 6. I just remembered.
But if not for knowing his daughter's age, and when you first saw her, I even said to you, I wonder if this is maybe even a granddaughter.
Right.
Because you don't know.
Yeah.
But you are left wondering what's going to happen with the next clone, considering the antenna or whatever it was that was jamming the live feed has now been destroyed. Oh. Is the rescue party going to have to stay there for a little bit until they can fix the antenna, get rid of the current clone, and pop in a new one?
Right. Yeah, it's they leave a lot open, but the story, it's not a long movie. It's including credits. It's an hour and 37 minutes, but it's exactly as long as it needs to be. It's long enough to allow for the emotional richness of each character to be explored, for moments of quiet and reflection, and at the same time, it goes fast. I mean, the story unfolds at a very, very good clip. It's not an action film. I mean, I believe there's a total of one sort of scuffle, but it's really not an action film. It's about how this unfolds. It's about how sort of this group of clones realizes what they're facing and how they deal with it. And I think one of the reasons we like it so much,
how they value each other,
yes,
or not value the clones that aren't awoken yet.
And I think that is such a great moment where one of the clones has a plan to save each other, and it involves basically sacrificing a clone, and another clone that's up who has nothing but respect for the plan and loves the plan. He says, "You can't kill anyone." And I know that because I can't. He said, "It's a great plan. You just picked the wrong clone."
Yeah.
And that's just it's performed so well. Even having me tell you that, I'm guessing you've probably seen the movie if you're listening to the podcast after I said spoilers, but it's performed so well, and you can just tell he says it with so much respect for the individual, that even though he's talking in a sense to himself, that they're both clones of the same person, that he has so much respect for the person he's talking to. And it's a very human moment. And I love that. That's one of the things I love so much about the movie, that it comes down very, very, very much on the side that clones are people, that they may not have been born, they may have had memories implanted, but they are people, and they have worth and rights and meaning, and you cannot use them as throwaway slaves.
And I guess you were saying that there is a follow-up, very loosely follow-up, Mute.
Mm-hmm.
And according to IMDb trivia, at around 25 minutes into Mute, there's a short news piece with the caption, "The 156 faced their maker. Lunar Industries ex-employee questioned by panel in presence of scores of the clones." So I guess it's Sam Bell and at least 28 clones.
Right.
Which would be curious to find out, how did 28 clones get back down to Earth?
Right. Interesting. It also took quite a bit of time to get that second movie in the Moon universe, considering that was a 2018 film. We haven't seen it yet. It's a 2018 film in the same world as a 2009. So what's that? 9 years? I think it's 2018.
Yeah, 9 years.
So it certainly took a while to get that second movie out. But I mean, I'm definitely curious now that I know it's a follow-up of sorts, even if it's loose and just its own story in that world.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a very big cast.
Well, yeah, really, it's Sam Rockwell's the only one on screen the whole time. It's just other people have little bits in video.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very end of the movie, the quote-unquote rescue team.
Which apparently is made up of a lot of the VX supervisor and other people.
Oh, very nice.
There was another trivia thing saying that when he crashes,
Mm-hmm.
the stuntman wasn't available. So I think it was said that, and I could get this wrong, that the producer stepped in because he figured, if anyone's going to get hurt, no one that's not going to sue.
Yeah. Okay.
So he got to be a stuntman for a day.
Oh, nice.
But it's, it was very well done. I like how you said that the entire moon base was created.
Yeah, they built the whole base in
And I guess he did
studios.
Talk to some NASA people.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically it would be possible to take the resources on the moon to build on the moon.
Right.
That you wouldn't have to transport everything up there because you could actually get enough material to make mooncrete or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and that's
I'm not sure about the food supply though.
Yeah, that would have to come from Earth. That's that's the thing about hard sci-fi, that there have not been many hard sci-fi movies that have made it to any kind of mainstream. Recently, there's been The Martian, which was excellent.
Well, there might be. We're just not watching.
Right. That's what I mean by mainstream is they got mainstream studio releases. And I would put Gravity in that category as well. Even though if you ask real scientists, that's when they start telling you, but these are movies that tried to be more plausible, and they tried to make the science not just internally consistent, which hopefully most science fiction movies, even if it's way out fantasy, try and be internally consistent. But they were trying to be consistent with what we currently can do and just sort of extrapolating a future of advancements from where we are today. So if you like hard sci-fi, if you're interested in moon investigation and human colonization, and if you just like stories about the human condition, I mean, I think this one kind of hits it all, really.
Yeah, it's domestic gross was 5 million, but its worldwide gross was 9.7.
That's not bad on a $5 million investment for an art movie that never got, I don't think I think in LA it played in only a few theaters.
I remember when it came out.
Yeah.
I didn't go see it.
It was one of those movies that probably got a couple weeks in, maybe 1,000 theaters, as opposed to a Marvel movie that gets months in 5,000 theaters.
I wouldn't have been surprised if it was at least over near us, though.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have art theaters not too far. Yeah,
the AMC tends to show a lot of artsy movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unlike the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, where I had to drive all the way into Los Angeles to see it because it was open in 2 or maybe only 1 theater in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it did not get a wide release. So I think obviously it did well enough that people took very, very good notice of Duncan Jones. I mean, his next movie, Source Code, had a much higher budget. Wasn't it close to $40 million or something?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, and it made more money.
So,
and it was a hit.
There was another piece of trivia I don't know if you were aware of.
Okay.
I guess he wanted Kevin Spacey to voice Gertie.
Okay.
But Kevin Spacey wasn't sure if he wanted to do it unless he liked the movie. So they filmed the entire movie. He watched it, liked it, and then did all of his recording, all of the lines in half a day.
Okay. Well,
it took, and also notice that it took 33 days to film, which is not a long time.
No, not at all. It helps keep the budget down, though.
The only other movie that I've heard of recently that took only 30 days was Knives Out.
Right. Because they had to. They had no choice there. That was a bigger budget movie, but, they had to make sure they could get Chris Evans in and all these, people who had, bigger jobs.
Knives Out. What has brought back the cable knit sweater?
Yeah, I think the issue with Knives Out, and I could be wrong, but it was both that they only had
The availability for the actors.
Yeah, that you what's his name? Daniel Craig was like on a break from Bond or something, and Chris Evans was on a break from Marvel movies, and so he just had to take advantage of that moment to make that movie. But whoa, boy, that was a perfect film. That was a perfect film, and I'd say that Moon is also just such a great film. And when you look at the special effects, when you see the scenes on the moon, nothing looks cheap. Nothing looks noticeably artificial, noticeably cheap. It looks good.
I mean, there's some argument as to the fact that they're supposed to be on the dark side, so why can you see the Earth? And
yeah, that's one of those. There's always something.
Because we like to see the Earth
because
from the moon.
Because it made for a beautiful shot.
Yeah,
that's why. Because Duncan Jones said, "Oh, this would be a great to have him, get off this phone call and look up."
And I loved at the end where he's stuck in this little capsule that cannot be very comfortable, and it's just cheering and
right. It's a joy.
Yeah,
it's a moment of joy.
It's I'm out.
This was a clone that was never destined to have a life, and he is on his way to having a life.
I think one of the other things in the trivia, if I remember correctly, was that what he has underneath his arm is like $3 million worth of, or however much, of the helium-3, so that he can live comfortably.
Sure.
I don't remember what the value was, but whatever it was
enough,
extremely sufficient.
Yes, that it was
for him to live comfortably during his probably only 3-year lifespan.
Sure.
But
what's also interesting is reading about Duncan Jones. I remember reading that he loved Blade Runner. That Blade Runner was one of his favorite films, and that world and everything. And this movie has nothing at all to do with Blade Runner itself, yet the theme that manufactured humanity still has life and rights and personality is present in this movie. And I think in his own way, he made a very fitting contribution to that discussion that Blade Runner began. Well, thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/103. If you liked this episode, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. It's those reviews that help people who like this stuff find our podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.
The Omega Beam. Full stop.